to state to the court that if we were allowed to bring in the telephone records in regards to Ms. Jade Benning and the romantic relationships that she had with 2 other men, the state had brought up a text message by
Okay, hang on, let me make sure I'm understanding what you're talking about. You're talking about the pictures that you wanted to ask him about but didn't want to introduce.
It's not that I didn't want to introduce them, I did not want to display them in the open public.
That's what I said, you wanted to ask about them. Is that what you're talking about?
I wanted to introduce them, but not display publicly.
Is that what the text messages that your offer is about, is that what you're talking about?
It is, Your Honor.
Okay.
Yes. And so the state has put on evidence in regard to Mr. Taylor text messaging on the 24th with Ms. Xavier Winford. In that text message, it was in fact a romantic message. As a
Okay,
result,
you're getting off into something else. Tell me how the images of Ms. Benning are relevant to what you want to prove.
I want to introduce the relevance in regards to Ms. Benning's romantic relationship, that she too was seeing other.
And you're of the opinion the 2 images prove that?
They're not in their text message threads, not just the images.
Okay. You just asked me to introduce images.
I meant to say text messages if I didn't say images.
Where are they?
They are here, Your Honor.
All right, get those and we'll mark them B or whatever that other thing under C. Okay, what else you got?
In addition to that, Your Honor, in addition to that, yesterday the state asked Mr. Eric Devlin, who was the digital forensic person for the defense, whether or not, or at least represented that Jarius Porter was a friend of Ms. Benning's. There was a card left at the bedside with Ms. Benning, and it was from a Mr. Jarius Porter.
Who knows that?
I'm sorry?
Does Mr. Devlin know that?
I wasn't gonna bring it up with Mr. Devlin, but
Who you wanted to bring it up with?
only in response to the state's
But
ask.
how would he know that?
I was going to show him the actual cards.
How was he gonna know where it was found and located?
I was gonna ask him to read the cards.
How was he gonna know where it was found and located?
I was going to tell him.
Okay.
And those cards that was left on the side of the bed listed a Jarius Porter, and he referred to himself as her lover. And this was on March the 6th, the day of her death. And I thought that it would be in direct response to the state's solicitation of the relationship with Mr. Porter as only being friends.
All right, get those. You never asked the court to introduce, I don't know how many pages these are, 50 plus. You never asked the court anything about those texts. But we'll put them under seal for your proper.
And I specifically asked the court if I could introduce those text messages.
No, you didn't.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, who's the next witness?
At this time, Your Honor, the defense will call Dr. Janci Lindsay.
Okay, let the jury step down. Good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. If you would like the record to reflect all of your own are here present.
Yes, I do. Good morning, Carolyn.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Sure.
Judge Lindsay? Good morning, Dr. Lindsay.
Good morning.
Could you please state and spell your name for the record, please?
Dr. Janci Chun Lindsay, Janci Chun Lindsay.
And how are you employed, Dr. Lindsay?
I have my own consulting toxicology and molecular biology business, Toxicology Support Services, LLC.
And how long have you owned your own business?
Since mid-2009.
And could you give the court information in regards to your educational background?
Yes, I have a bachelor's degree in biological and physical sciences. I have a PhD in molecular biology and biochemistry.
Okay. And could you tell the court exactly when and where did you start working as a toxicologist?
I started working in the laboratory formally as a toxicologist. Most of my research over the years, I worked in a lab before going back to get my PhD, in between my bachelor's degree and my PhD, as a lab technician at the bench. And I was able to do a lot of toxicology research and even publish as a technician, which was really great. It helped me get into graduate school. But I started doing toxicology research then, and then I was hired directly after my PhD into Exponent Scientific Consulting Group as a toxicologist in their Toxicology and Mechanistic Biology division.
Very good. And have you had the opportunity to be published or have any articles published?
I have.
And have you had the opportunity to testify prior to today and be deemed as an expert?
Yes, many times over the past 20 years.
Would that be civil and criminal or both?
Both, and then military case.
Very good. At this time, I would tender Dr. Lindsay as an expert and would offer her CV,
In the field of
toxicology.
any questions from the state? All right, again, ladies and gentlemen, this witness will be allowed to give her expert opinion. You can place such weight on it as you choose to. And that'll be secret keys. Okay.
Dr. Lindsay, have you had the opportunity in this particular case to review any materials as it relates to the case against Mr. Taylor?
Yes, I have.
Can you inform the jury exactly what all materials have you had the opportunity to review?
Yes. I have reviewed the toxicology litigation packets that everybody has been talking about, the detective investigations, the EMS report for Jade Benning, the bond hearing transcript, which had interviews with several of the people that are involved, transcripts from these hearings, All the literature that I brought on the toxicology of both cocaine and fentanyl and them together. The Pandora records, which are the administrative records for all of the medications which Jade received while she was in the hospital. The ME records for Miss Benning and the baby Abby's autopsy report in Jade's medical records.
Thank you. I want to now draw your attention to toxicology lab report by ENS 23129285.
Yes.
You have that, and it's on the screen beside you as well.
Yes, I do have it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Do you remember specifically what was tested in this specific lab report?
Yes, this lab report covers the testing of Miss Benning's comforter, the blue comforter from the apartment.
And was there any type of bodily fluid that was found to be on the comforter?
So they had what they looked to be vomit in a section of the comforter that they extracted in order to test that section of the comforter for drugs. And then they chose another section of the comforter as a case blank, which did not appear to have any vomitus on that portion of the comforter.
And what is a case blank, Dr. Lindsay?
So there are several case blanks in these types of tests. They'll be just the homogeneous buffer that they use to extract, and of course it should have nothing in it. And then they'll use an area of the comforter or clothing that they believe does not have any of the liquid item or blood or whatever the matrix is that they're testing, so that can be a blank for them as well. So they'll have just the buffer, and then they'll have what they think is a true blank on the material.
There's been a lot of talk about the word matrix. Will you tell the jury exactly what a matrix is?
So in this case, when we're talking about matrix, we're just talking about whether it's blood or urine or fabric or vomit. That's all it means. It's not meant to be a fancy word.
Now, this jury has heard a lot of science, and I'm sure they don't want to hear a whole lot more.
What is your question?
Could you tell us exactly what was found to be positive on this comforter from Miss Benning's home?
Yes, I can. So on the comforter, we have the presence of fentanyl, we have the presence of cocaine, we have the presence of the primary metabolite of cocaine, benzoyl ligoxanine. They did not test for EME, but we do have cocoethylene as well, which is what forms when you use cocaine and ethanol at the same time.
Okay. And ethanol, would that be alcohol, like drinking alcohol?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Were there any other substances that were at some point found on this comforter but was later to be determined inconclusive?
Yes.
Do you know what those are?
I believe those were THC, methamphetamines, and I think it was just THC and methamphetamine.
Very good.
Yeah.
But to be fair, they later determined that the spikes, if you will, were not placed in that test, so they could not say affirmatively whether that was so. Is that right?
That's right, and they didn't rerun the test, which they could have done.
Okay.
And they also didn't report those values. Yeah.
Okay, and so to be clear, it wasn't that they weren't present, it's just that they did not run the confirmation to get a more definitive result.
Correct. This was the first time they were doing this assay, so they were coming up with a new technique. That's the best way to say it. So it hadn't been validated yet.
And what is an assay?
An assay is just a protocol for how you do something in the lab.
Okay. Now, were they able to quantify any of the substances?
Sorry. Goodness.
Oh, you need a napkin?
I'm making a mess up here. I apologize.
There are tissues on the side there.
Oh, yeah, I got it. Sorry about that. Okay.
Were they able to quantify any of the substances that were found on the comforter?
Well, they purported to be able to quantify them, but not really, because there's no comparative. Since they were doing this for the first time, they had no comparative liquid. They added a buffer, but it's not like it was blood or urine, so they added a buffer to it. There's nothing to compare it to in the literature to give it a. So they came up with an amount, but there's no other something in the literature to say if you took this amount of drug and vomited this much on this comfort in this volume, you would have, you know, a certain concentration. So that's why it's really more qualitative, what we call qualitative than quantitative, or semi-quant.
Did you still need the towel for you?
Yeah, let court officer clean that up for you.
Sorry, that's very disruptive. Apologize. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So, in regards to the cocaine that was found, how does the cocaine relate to, I think, what you call BZE? Can you explain that to the jury?
Sure. So benzoyl ligocaine, or BZE, sometimes called BE, is the major metabolite of cocaine. It's formed when cocaine passes through the liver, as is the next metabolite, EN, the aragocnine methyl ester.
And the BE and the cocaine, was that found in the vomits?
Yes, it was.
Now let's talk about the fentanyl. Where was the fentanyl found on the comforter?
So it was found in both the vomitus and in the case blank, which complicates things. You know.
Why does that complicate things?
Well, because the case blank was supposed to be a case blank. So finding fentanyl on the case blank indicates that there was the presence of fentanyl on the comforter, either from contamination or from prior use.
And did the lab expect to find fentanyl on the case blank?
No. No, it should not have had fentanyl.
What is the purpose of a case blank?
Well, to be a blank area of the substance you're testing, as we kind of went over a minute ago. Yeah.
Is that the purpose, to see whether or not the instrument is working properly and things of that nature?
Now that's another blank.
Okay.
So like I said, you'll have like a buffer blank, and then you'll have just another blank for the media that you're using, if that's possible in this type of a fabric test, or maybe you're testing an airbag or something else like that.
Did they rerun that fentanyl to ensure that there was nothing wrong with their instrument, and to ensure that the fentanyl that they found outside of the vomitus was in fact a true presence of fentanyl?
I don't remember if they reran that fentanyl, but I know that they validated that the fentanyl was there. Dr. Methune validated that the fentanyl was, or excuse me, Dr. Kolosky from CFSRE, I think, and Dr. Methune from NMS.
And is Dr. Methune the actual forensic toxicologist who in fact performed the testing on this particular comforter?
Yes.
Now I want to bring your attention to the cocaethylene.
Yes.
Where was the cocaethylene found?
So the cocoethylene was found in the vomitus, but not in the case blank.
Thank you. And again, no concentrations could be attributed to any of these substances as it relates to the comforter.
Well, comparatively, there's no ability to compare. So it's a semi-quant. They purported to have an amount, but what do you compare it to?
Thank you.
That's kind of the problem.
And would that be consistent with Dr. Bethune's testimony that you could not give a definitive quantitative value on any of these substances?
Yes.
I now want to draw your attention. Could you, thank you. Do you see what's on the side of you there?
Yes.
And I believe that this would be State's Exhibit number 46, I believe. And could you tell us what exactly this is?
It looks like it's the chromatographs from the testing.
Okay. And what is a am I saying that?
The chromatograph?
Chromatographs, what is that?
It's the first part of the testing when you use a chromatography method. They'll say something like, we're going to test by GCMS, gas chromatography, mass spectrophotometry. If any of you remember chemistry back in school where you had to go through organic chemistry and identify the compounds, and you might have learned about chromatography and mass spectrophotometry. The mass spec looks at the ion, the chromatography looks at where that chemical elutes off of a column. And each chemical has its own kind of signature time where it elutes off of the column. And according to its abundance, it'll make what looks like a mountain peak. And you can measure the area under the curve and compare it to a standard curve to get an idea of the relative abundance of that particular sample.
Now, to be fair, did NMS find that the fentanyl was a number such that it was below the rate of where they would detect it, meaning below the reportable limit?
Below the limit of quantitation or below the limit of detection. Concentration. They've got it highlighted. Yes.
And what does that mean when it's below the level of detection?
Well, they won't record it often. So it's there, but it's not being reported.
And is that something that's pretty standard in all labs, that before they will actually report something, it has to be at a certain level?
Yes, I think people are probably most familiar with it in alcohol in hospital tests. If you don't have above 10 milligrams, which is about a half a drink for a 150-pound person per deciliter, then they won't report it. Even if you have alcohol in your system, they'll say it's just a negative test.
Very good. Josh, can you? I want to now bring your attention to work order 23126889. And it is also on the screen.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Can you tell us what exactly is this particular toxicology report testing?
Yes, so this is the blood that was taken at the hospital at 10:31. Unfortunately, it was collected in the wrong type of tube in order to store the blood and the enclosed chemicals properly. Typically, in order to preserve cocaine, which is super susceptible to hydrolysis and degradation, we have to add some sodium fluoride and some other chemicals to keep it stable, or it'll just spontaneously degrade. But they used a clear plastic tube with no sodium fluoride or anything in the tube, which is problematic. And then there's the liver tissue from the baby and the homogenate of the liver tissue and buffer from the baby.
And this, you had stated that it was taken at 10:59. Would that be on February 25th of 2023?
Yes. Sorry, I didn't stipulate that.
Would this be at a time when Ms. Benning was actually in Vanderbilt Hospital?
Yes, when she first came to the hospital.
Did this particular test positive for any substances?
Yes, it did. And let me get mine out because I can see it better. So it tested positive for the main metabolite of cocaine, benzoyl at 1,800 nanograms per mil, for cocaine at 78 nanograms per mil, and for agocnine methyl ester at 7,800 nanograms per mil, as well as for fluconazole in the baby's tissue, which is an antifungal at microgram per gram. So it was just a presumptive positive, a qualitative, what we call a qual instead of a quantitative.
Okay. And do you see whether or not cocaethylene had an indication on this particular test?
So on this particular test, they don't report cocoethylene, but in 8, 9, no, they don't. They didn't report cocoethylene in this test.
And do you see whether or not a confirmation test was ran on cocaethylene on the last page of this particular report? It's also on your screen next to you, page 3 of 4.
Yes.
Why would a lab run a confirmation test on any substance?
Because they had detected it in the okay, so these are the reporting limits. That actually isn't being the actual result. Those are the reporting limits.
But do you see that there was a confirmation test actually ran for cocaethylene?
So they would run a confirmation test if they saw that it was in the first portion of the test, which is usually an immunoassay screen.
And why do they run screens as opposed to just going straight to the confirmation?
Some labs do go straight to the confirmation through something called QTOF. Labs are moving towards that, but it's less expensive to do the ELISA.
And what reason then, if they found cocaethylene or had a detection, why wouldn't they report it?
It may have been below their reporting limit or their limit of quantitation if it's a quantitative test. So this particular test was a quantitative test. You see everything's reported in quantitative units in nanograms per mil, not just presumptive positive or positive, except for the fluconazole. So if it's below their limit of proper quantitation, that is, if it's off the curve, if it doesn't fit on their curve because it's too low, then they won't report it. Or if it's below their limit of detection for reasonable presence.
Thank you. I want to ask you now a few questions as it relates to the substance cocaethylene. Could you educate the jury what reasons would cocaethylene appear in any matrix?
So if cocoethylene is there, that indicates that a person has ingested ethanol and cocaine at the same time and it has gone through the liver. It has to go through the liver to make the cocoethylene. So this isn't something that would spontaneously form in the saliva or just in the blood. It has to go through first, what we call first pass metabolism.
And does let me ask you this. Cocaethylene, I believe you testified before that it was when cocaine and ethanol come together at the exact same time. Is that right? Is there any other reason that that would appear?
No.
How long does it take? Well, let me ask you this. We don't see ethanol when you find cocaethylene. What does that mean if cocaethylene is the presence of cocaine and alcohol at the same time? How could you see cocaethylene but not see ethanol?
So the ethanol will bind the cocaine and make cocoethylene, and cocoethylene has a longer half-life than alcohol. So if the alcohol is above the level of the cocaine, then what's ever left over you might measure, but people have an average burn rate of 18 milligrams per deciliter per hour, or 0.3 milligrams per minute of alcohol. So she could have, in a scenario, let's hypothesize a scenario, if she had drank even 4 drinks earlier that day, it would have been completely gone by the time she got to the hospital.
And so can you educate the jury, what is a half-life?
A half-life is the amount of time it takes for a particular chemical to be divided in half in the blood or the urine, depending on which half-life you're looking at, for half of it to dissipate and be gone.
Now, half-lives in terms of what that is for each particular substance, is it different for every substance?
Yes, it is.
Is this a standard accepted practice in toxicology?
Yes, it's at the top of most of the toxicology treatises, I guess you would say, in the Besselt's reference, which is kind of the Bible of toxicology and drugs. It's listed in the top left-hand corner in the literature that I've presented.
What is the half-life for cocaine?
So the half-life for cocaine is pretty short. It's cited as anywhere from 0.3 to an hour.
And I believe you testified that BZE is the first metabolite of cocaine, the parent cocaine?
That's correct, and it has a different half-life than cocaine.
What is the half-life for BZE?
I think it's 1 to 2 hours for BZE.
And does EME have a different half-life than the parent cocaine and BZE?
It does. I don't recall EME's half-life off the top of my head, but it is longer than cocaine, the parent compound, which is why you see the large amounts of metabolite with the smaller amounts of cocaine.
And EME would be the second metabolite that forms after BZE?
Well, they form, I have a chart, they form differently. So BZE and cocaine are not, or BZE and EME are not the only metabolites of cocaine. There are several other metabolites, but those are the main metabolites of cocaine that are formed and measured in the pharmacokinetic studies that we look at to try to get an idea of how much should be in the blood or urine after a person ingests a certain amount.
And what is the half-life of cocaethylene?
So cocoethylene has a longer half-life as well. It's cited as different, anywhere from like 1 to 4 hours, basically. Some say 1 to 2, some say 2 to 4.
Do you know what would be the difference as to why it would be 1 hour versus 4 hours?
So inter-individual metabolism, co-ingestants, if a person's taking a particular drug that can retard the pharmacokinetic profile for that particular drug, because drugs use similar enzymes. So for cocaine, the main enzyme is CYP3A4. And CYP3A4 is a universal enzyme that metabolizes a lot of drugs, including fentanyl.
And let me ask you this, what is pharmacokinetics? You just mentioned that. Could you educate the jury what that is?
So pharmacokinetics is, I guess, the study of the metabolism of a substance and the ability to look at it over time, its decay over time. You can measure the pharmacokinetics if you give a person dose X of a drug and you know what their weight is and you can estimate their volume, their body volume of blood, then you can graph a curve for how long it should take for that particular drug using the known half-life in different compartmental models to be exited from the body. As long as you don't have some other drugs that are using the same enzyme that are interfering with that curve, which is unfortunately what we have here.
And would that be the equivalent that the jury could probably understand is if someone is pulled over for drinking while driving, and the police may want to try to figure out what was his blood alcohol level at a certain time, you know, if they did
Yes.
get it particular. Is that the same as the extrapolation of alcohol to get that quantitative number?
Yes, there's pharmacokinetics for alcohol, and we just discussed them a little bit ago, that 18 milligrams per deciliter per hour burn rate, and I do that all the time.
Okay. And so were you able to guesstimate or try to determine, given the cocaethylene that was found in the vomitus of Ms. Benning, were you able to utilize pharmacokinetics to get an idea as to when you would have thought that Ms. Benning would have ingested cocaine and alcohol at the same time?
So, I guess first of all, it's an assumption to say it was an oral, she ingested something orally, right, beyond the alcohol. We don't know for sure with the cocaine, right?
Okay.
And second of all, we have to allow for the pass through the liver for it to show up in the blood.
Okay.
So, you know, we would say in the past few hours.
You say the past few hours, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, or can you say?
Can't really say, no.
And is one of the reasons that you can't say is because in regards to the vomit, there aren't any numbers that can definitively be determined for that particular test.
Right, we don't have a matrix to compare it to, the blood, right, or the urine.
What about the blood that was found in 231268889? Are you able in any way to try to determine the pharmacokinetics in that regard?
So this is the tube that didn't have the preservative in it, the plastic sample, and we know that cocaine is very volatile. However, we don't know to the extent that it was volatilized, or hydrolyzed, excuse me, not volatilized. And what I mean by that is I think earlier Dr. Carney tried to infer that Ms. Benning had a 78 cocaine level when she came to the hospital, and then they drew her blood, and then it all just spontaneously hydrolyzed to the tube. And I think that is very incorrect to say. One, it's not possible because cocaine is metabolized so fast. Some of it would have metabolized already by the time she got to the hospital, no matter when she took it, because that 0.3 to an hour. And two, because these numbers, if I just saw these numbers,
I don't mean to interrupt you. When you say these numbers, are you speaking of the BE at 1800, the cocaine at 78, and the EME at 7800?
Yes, the smaller amount of cocaine at 78, the BCE at 1800, and the large amount of EME. If I knew nothing about this case, I would think that this was a person who had used throughout the day and had stacked because of the large amount of metabolite. Now, what does that mean practically for us? And the tube that doesn't have the proper preservative in it, it means we don't know. We don't know what that number should have been. We don't know if it was higher in cocaine and it just hydrolyzed. Or we don't know if it indicates there was stacking or use going on during the day.
Okay. And why don't you
From
know?
a toxicology perspective.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why don't you know?
Because there wasn't any preservative in the tube. And so we don't know whether half of it hydrolyzed, all of it hydrolyzed, some of it hydrolyzed.
So are you stating then, Dr. Lindsay, that the pharmacokinetics as it relates to cocaine is determined once that cocaine is preserved properly, and that's when you get more definitive numbers.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
And so when Dr. Kotulski stated also that he would not agree to add the EME and the parent cocaine to get a definitive number, you would agree with that?
Yes, but for a different reason. I wouldn't do that in a good cocaine sample.
Okay.
Because they have different molar ratios and different half-lives, so they won't be present in a one-to-one. It's not an apples-to-apples comparison. You might get a relative sort of abundance, or what's better to do is to compare it to what's in the literature when they give measured amounts of cocaine, and then they record what 10 people have in their urine or their blood 2 or 3 hours after they give the dose. And that, I feel like that is a better mechanism to try to get at that.
To that point, did you ever review other material and ascertain that 2 days later, Ms. Benning's blood tested positive for cocaine and had a measure of 69 nanograms per milliliters of cocaine?
Yes, I did, which would be pretty impossible by normal pharmacokinetics if the half-life was maintained as it would be with cocaine alone.
What do you mean by that?
She would have had to use an elephant's worth of cocaine at the high end and anywhere from like 6 to 14 8-balls at the low end.
4 to 16 8-balls. What is an 8?
16, yeah.
What is an 8-ball?
3.5 grams of cocaine. And that's the low end. So the pharmacokinetics don't make sense. So why? Why don't they make sense? So the co-ingestion, I'm going to get a little water and I'm not going to spill it this time. Promise. The co-ingestion of fentanyl or the co-use of fentanyl with cocaine, whether it's ingested or not, they both use the same enzyme, that's CYP3A4. They also both inhibit the clearance of each other. So fentanyl inhibits an enzyme that pumps cocaine out of cells. And fentanyl also causes dopamine to accumulate at the synapse, which is the main mechanism of action of cocaine. What does that mean? That means if you use them together, you don't have the same half-life. You have cocaine hanging around longer and you have fentanyl hanging around longer. And because of that, you increase the toxicity of the two drugs and you lower the threshold dose at which toxicity occurs. In short terms, using them together makes them much more toxic at a lower level.
And how then can you explain that if Ms. Benning was in the hospital on 2/25 at 22:31, which would have been on February 25th of 23, at 10:31 p.m., and stayed in the hospital until her next blood test draw on February 27th, how then did that nanograms per milliliters of cocaine only go down by 9 points?
So, one, it probably didn't just go down by 9 points. There probably was more cocaine initially. However, as I said, the cocaine pharmacokinetics don't work. She obviously didn't ingest or was exposed to an elephant's worth of cocaine, nor probably 16 8-balls. The cocaine has a very anesthetic effect, and they even use it in anesthesia for eye surgery and for nose surgery. So that much cocaine would have numbed her mouth completely, or her nose, or her face. It's just not probable. So what is probable is that the pharmacokinetics of using fentanyl and cocaine together retarded the clearance. How much? We don't know. So where normally with a single drug, you might be able to do some pharmacokinetics to try to arrive at what the dose might have been in the beginning. You can't do that here.
So to have a number, for example, to utilize the number Dr. Carney opined on, of 7,878, can someone, in your opinion, slip that amount of cocaine in someone's drink without them noticing?
Objection, Your Honor. Just to
I'll
correct.
sustain the objection.
I'll ask you a hypothetical. I have to ask you a question. Let me give you a hypothetical. If someone was to slip an enormous amount of cocaine into someone else's drink, what, if any, symptoms would you expect that person to feel when levels are 7,878?
So I think people are getting the levels kind of mixed up.
She just asked you a question.
Okay, that level is actually within a normal medium to high use parameter for people that abuse the drug.
But would
That's
they,
not answering the question.
would they experience any symptoms?
Yes. So they would experience the normal symptoms from using cocaine.
And what type of symptoms would they experience with 7,878 nanograms per milliliters of cocaine?
Oh, if the level was that high, what a medium to high user would experience: tachycardia, agitation, higher heart rate, pulse. Sometimes some thoughts of persecution, fuzzy halos around the eye, around bright lights, hyperthermia.
So, and I guess my question is, if they were to drink that amount, would that affect the numbness in their mouth?
That amount, perhaps not. It might make them a little bit numb. What would make them really numb is trying to do the pharmacokinetics back to an expected dose.
So,
From that 69, which is our most reliable sample.
okay, so the 69, was the amount in her blood on February 27th. If you were to use the pharmacokinetics to go back to February 25th, 23, what amount of cocaine would she have had to consume in order to be at 69 nanograms per milliliters on February 27th?
That's where we talked about the elephant and the multiple 8 balls, and I said that it was improbable. So in reality, we just don't know how much she consumed beyond that first blood measurement, which was in an improper tube. So it didn't give us an idea of when. It could have been earlier in that day. It could have been right before.
But will it be more than the amount that we see on these tests?
Oh, yes. Well, the 69 going backwards, yes. But the 78 is within normal limits of a high dose use, medium to high dose use.
And given those numbers that you stated would be very high doses, would you expect someone who was drinking that amount of high dose to experience numbness in their mouth?
Yes, they should.
I want to ask you a question in regards to liquid cocaine.
Okay.
Is liquid cocaine a thing? Is that a thing?
Not really, but people do dissolve cocaine in liquids.
And to dissolve cocaine in a liquid, along with alcohol, how much cocaine would someone have to dissolve in a liquid to end up at the numbers we see on these tests?
To end up with the numbers that you see on the test,
Yes.
not that much. For, what a medium to high dose user would use. The problem is that the test is not reliable to tell us when it was used. That's really the problem.
And I'm not speaking of the numbers on the test, I'm talking about going back to 225 in order to end up on 227 at these numbers.
Oh, that's super high dose. That's improbable. That's how we know the pharmacokinetics are off. You can't use the singular compartmentalized.
In your opinion, do you believe that to use the pharmacokinetics to go back, because we know the half-life is 0.7 to 1 hour. And
3 to 1 hour.
0.3 to 1 hour.
It's
And
different in
so
different places. Yeah.
that means, let's just use an hour for an example. For every hour, you would have to go back, cut that number in half. Is that right?
Increase that number, yes.
Sorry, increase, going backwards, increase
Yeah.
that number. And so every hour, you would increase that number by half to go back.
Which is billions of milligrams, which is why you're in the ton range. So,
And that pharmacokinetics is in fact the standard accepted manner in order to determine what that person's dose was at the time that we are trying to determine on 225, on the evening of 225, that is an accepted practice in your field of toxicology.
yes, if you can get it to a single drug where it's acceptable, yes.
Thank you. I pass the witness.
Sure.
Dr. Lindsay, so you claim that you've reviewed several things in this case file, correct?
No, I reviewed several things in the case file.
That's what I just said.
I think you said I claimed to
You
review.
claim to, I'm saying, you said that you reviewed the toxicology reports, the detective investigation, you said
Yes.
the EMS,
That's
the
correct.
reports.
Yes.
Have you been watching all the testimony this week?
I've been watching most of the testimony. I tried to watch most of it, yes.
Okay. And you reviewed the bond hearing transcript, correct?
That's correct.
And the Pandora records and the medical examiner records, correct?
That's correct.
And so you heard Dr. Carney's testimony before this jury, is that right?
That's correct.
And you heard Dr. Kowalewski's testimony before this jury, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And you also heard Dr. Mithen's testimony before this jury, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so you were talking about the methamphetamine and the marijuana that came up in the assay test on the comforter. That's what you started out talking about. Do you remember that?
I remember it was mentioned, but that was one of the side tests that were done, or one of the results that came up, but it wasn't validated.
Correct. It wasn't validated because they can have false positives, correct?
I believe it wasn't valid, well, yes, because of the iron ratios, they weren't correct.
And that's what Dr. Mithen testified to, is that it could be a false positive. It did not mean anything. She just noted it, correct?
That's correct.
And you would not report out something that is that low level, correct?
So there was a difference between the ion ratios being off and it being a low level. I don't believe she said that they didn't report it because of the low level. I can go back and check the testimony, or you can put it
It
up.
was the ion ratios were off. It was something that she couldn't report, correct?
Right, and they didn't run it again to see, because I think they were concentrating on the cocaine and the fentanyl, so, yeah, they only ran it at one time.
You would agree that Ms. Benning had multiple tests run and none of them tested positive for methamphetamine, correct?
Oh, correct, yes.
Okay, and none of them tested positive for marijuana either, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and also when she got to the hospital, she did not have alcohol in her system. That came back negative, correct?
No, you can't say that because the reporting threshold is 10 nanograms per mil. So as I discussed earlier, anything below that 10 nanograms per mil will be reported as a negative.
Okay, but
So we can only say that it was reported as a negative, that it was either negative or less than 10 nanograms per mil.
okay, so if the cocaine was dissolved in a very small amount of alcohol and put in her drink and she ingested it that way,
Yes.
that would explain the cocaine that is apparently so incredibly important.
It would have to be a larger amount of ethanol, not just a little bit, in order to come up in the assays. So we're not talking like a teaspoon. I think somebody had said something crazy like vanilla before.
Well, you just said somebody said something crazy. That's interesting because you're saying that it came up in the comforter, the cocoethylene, correct?
In the vomitus, yes.
Okay, but Dr. Mithen's report specifically does not even have a numeric value. The response was so low.
Yet it's still persisting in other matrices a couple days later, so it just hadn't formed all the way probably.
It literally does not have a numeric value. That is how low it is.
Okay, but it's still persisting in other matrices days later, so we know that it was at a higher value then, even given its half-life.
Days later, when she's in the hospital receiving medication after medication after medication, trying to keep her alive on life support because she ingested liquid cocaine. Correct?
You don't know that.
Dr. Lindsay, you have heard
Excuse
three
me.
experts
You don't need to raise your voice.
testify.
Your
Okay,
Honor, I
have a
have
seat, Ms.
objection.
Collins, just ask your question in a reasonable manner.
Dr. Lindsay, you have heard three experts testify that it was ingested and it had to be a liquid. It was in her drink.
Are you testifying? Because there's
Ma'am,
nothing.
Please don't interject yourself. Just keep yourself calm as well. You don't ask questions, okay?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
There is
Now,
nothing.
what is your question? You said three experts said X. What is your question?
You've heard the three experts testify that it was ingested orally, correct?
I've heard them testify that it could have been ingested orally.
Have you heard them testify that there was no evidence that it was ingested in any other manner?
No, I haven't.
You haven't heard that testimony.
I have not. If you point it out, I would be happy to look at it.
Okay, so you didn't hear Dr. Carney's testimony when she described her autopsy.
That wouldn't show you whether it was ingested orally or by any other manner.
Okay, and Dr. Lindsay, you went on and on about pharmacokinetics and calculating a dose. Did you provide your calculations?
Did I provide my calculations? No, but anybody can do them. If it's a half-life of 30 half-lives in between the first and the second dose, you would be up to billions of milligrams.
Okay, so you don't have any math that supports that at all for pharmacokinetics?
I did it at one time, but it was so off the chart, I knew that it was incorrect.
Oh, so you knew that you were incorrect.
No, I knew that the pharmacokinetics did not make sense.
Well,
So
did
anybody
it-
can take, the other experts didn't do the same calculations, and they could have, or they should have. They would have seen right away that it was not possible.
Well, you're saying it's not possible because you're refusing to acknowledge that it was ingested in liquid form, correct?
No, I'm not. I'm saying we don't know. It could have been ingested in liquid form, or it could have been used in another form. We just don't know.
Well, that's what you're saying, that you just don't know. But Dr. Carney was very positive when she did her autopsy report.
That
So
wouldn't have shown, an autopsy report would not show whether someone had ingested it orally or ingested it through insufflation or injection. An autopsy would not show that.
Dr. Lindsay, are you a forensic pathologist?
No, I'm not a forensic pathologist, but I'm a toxicologist, and it would not show that. If you want to describe how it would show that, maybe that could enlighten me.
Dr. Lindsay, I am asking you the questions.
Okay, and I'm
Have you
correcting
ever
you.
performed an autopsy?
No,
Yes or no?
no.
Okay. Did you hear Dr. Krolewski's testimony where he said that he would not even attempt to calculate using pharmacokinetics to try to calculate the dose?
He doesn't do that regularly in his practice. He's more of an analytical chemist. It was clear by the way he answered the questions, and that's why he wouldn't do the pharmacokinetic calculations. That's more of a biochemistry type thing.
Dr. Lindsay, that was not Dr. Krolewski's answer. You do know that, correct?
I listened to his testimony, and that's how I knew he didn't do that. He didn't do it on a regular basis. He's more of an analytical chemist toxicologist than a strict toxicologist who does pharmacokinetic modeling. I think he was open about that.
Okay. Dr. Lindsay, I know that you do. So you're saying that you reviewed everything in the investigation file and the testimony at the bond hearing, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
But you are here testifying that you think it's possible that Jade Benning was drinking 4 drinks out and doing cocaine. How was she doing it again?
We don't know.
Okay, but what did you use for your pharmacokinetics calculation?
So that's a little bit different. What I'm saying is we don't know whether she ingested it orally or whether through insufflation or whether injection. We just don't know because the numbers don't tell us. And the only reliable numbers we have are from a tube that did not have preservative in it. So while a ratio in a proper tube might give us an idea of whether it was orally ingested instead of insufflated, we didn't have that because we have the tube that didn't have the proper preservative in it.
Okay, so my question is, for the pharmacokinetics that you testified about, I think at one point you said 16 8 balls. What was the ingestion method that you used for that pharmacokinetics calculation?
So I did assume an oral bioavailability for that. Oh, gosh, should have been using that before.
So you assumed liquid cocaine.
Cocaine taken orally.
Dissolved in a liquid.
It doesn't have to be dissolved in a liquid. It's the same thing if you take it orally or food, liquid, whatever. It's going through the metabolism that way instead of going through insufflation or vaginal insertion or whatever.
So you said that, and then immediately afterwards you said, but you can't calculate the pharmacokinetics with this case.
Correct.
So you calculated it, and then you said you cannot calculate it in this case.
Yeah, so the history is that when I tried to apply proper pharmacokinetics to this case, it didn't work. And so then I went into researching, because it wasn't plausible, then I went into researching, well, why could that be? And then there are a couple articles that I provided the literature here. The best one is Chang et al., who goes into the pharmacokinetics of cocaine and fentanyl taken together and how they both inhibit each other's clearance. What does that mean practically? They both inhibit each other's half-life or clearance. So we don't know how much.
Dr. Lindsay, you're going on and on about cocaine and fentanyl. Those aren't the facts of this case. Dr. Lindsay, you do agree that on the internet there is information about liquid cocaine. Do you agree with that?
Yes, can we clear up the last statement?
Do you want to start arguing with her?
No, she just made a factually
Okay,
incorrect
your lawyer,
statement.
they want to ask you, they'll ask you. Go ahead.
Okay.
What is your literature about liquid cocaine?
It's on the internet, correct? There's rehab facilities that have internet pages. When you go to it, it says do not ingest it this way because it is lethal and it will kill you. You have seen that, correct?
Yes, if you orally use cocaine, you can overdo the amount because the bioavailability is less and it takes longer to absorb.
And it is known to cause death. It is lethal, correct?
No, lots of people use cocaine that way. I mean, it's not preferable. You kind of waste part of the drug, but apparently the high is supposed to be better. The problem is the fentanyl along with the cocaine, which lowers the threshold dose of toxicity.
Okay, so if a website says that it increases the risk of sudden death, you're just saying not really, even though.
I'm saying it doesn't cause death in all cases.
Objection or speculation.
But it can cause death, and there is information on the internet that warns people about that. Don't you agree?
Objection, Your Honor.
Okay, I'll overrule the objection. She's going to answer, I think.
Yes, of course it can cause death. It depends on the amount.
And you would agree too that there is a lot of information on the internet about cocaine and that it can cause a placental abruption or a spontaneous abortion if used when pregnant, correct?
Cocaine can cause myocardial infarctions, including things like placental abruptions. Yes, it can.
I mean, this is the U.S. Department of Justice, 1988, cocaine use in pregnancy can lead to spontaneous abortion of the fetus.
Yes, it can also lead to birth of those babies, which everybody knows about, the crack babies, the cocaine babies that are adopted, thankfully.
Thank you, Dr. Lindsay.
Any other questions?
Yes, Your Honor. May I have that come on, please?
Pardon?
I was asking him if I could utilize the phone here.
It's up.
Thank you. Dr. Lindsay,
Yes.
I want to draw your attention. First, let me do this. Draw your attention to the NMS litigation packet and from data in regards to, oh, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. In regards to 2312-9285. Do you see that?
I do.
And do you see the window for coca-ethylene?
I do.
And just to be clear, 2312-9285, is that the comforter we've been discussing this morning?
Yes.
And do you see a peak in a presence for coca-ethylene?
Yes, this was also admitted to by Methuen and Katalski.
If you'll just answer the question as it's given.
Sorry.
Instead of ad-libbing all of the information. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yes.
And so does that in fact show that there was in fact the presence of coca-ethylene on the comforter in the vomitus?
Yes.
Now, to be fair, it was not up to the reportable limit, but it was in fact there.
Yes.
Are there reasons why a substance will not be at a reportable limit?
if it's not formed yet, if it's below the reportable limit.
And would this be before Ms. Benning ever made it to Vanderbilt Hospital?
Yes.
I now want to show you again NMS Laboratory Report 231-29285. Do you see that?
Yes.
That is the same number associated with the comforter. Is that right?
That's right.
And do you see the fentanyl peak in this window here?
Yes.
And is that peak a representative of, in fact, fentanyl being present in the vomitus on the comforter?
Dr. Midthen testified that it was, yes.
So it's not just you stating that the fentanyl was present and or the cocaethylene was present. This is NMS lab data that was performed by Dr. Methuen.
Yes.
Your Honor, may we approach briefly?
Okay.
Finally, Dr. Lindsay, is there any type of treatment at a hospital that will cause you to test positive for cocaethylene?
No.
Thank you.
Not that I know of. I would
Thank
say.
you. I'll pass
Yes.
it.
Any other questions?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you, ma'am. You can take
Thank you, Your Honor.
At this time, Your Honor, the defense will call Dr. Kelly Larkin.
Okay.
We approach briefly. She's coming in.
Did the state get what you wanted?
Yes, Your Honor. I mean, maybe we have a few minutes to review this. Having now just been handed.
Something different?
Yes. Which might result in a jury out.
You'll step down the hallway, ladies and gentlemen.
This just appears to be notes that she took. The first page are notes that come from the testimony, 911 call that Mr. Taylor made. There is testimony notes from Janci Jackson. She has names here of the EMTs. She has some medication notes from the medical records.
And all of this just was generated overnight.
And it's not original thoughts, it's just notes that she took from the records that.
All of that was generated overnight?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes.
What does that mean?
I'm assuming she took notes in regards to when she and I met and we went over what she would testify about today.
How long does the state need?
Would you like to see the notes, Your Honor?
I don't know. How long does the state need?
We have just maybe 3 or 4 more minutes, and maybe in that time can get Dr. Carney
Okay.
connected up.
How long is it gonna take to get Dr. Carney a link?
We just sent it to her.
Oh, okay. Somebody told me 20 minutes.
That's what, initially, Judge, they actually said 30 minutes. And then we cut it down a whole lot.
And just, I'm trying to see when, I don't know if it'll be this week or next week when we finish the proof, but you're planning on calling Mr. Taylor? Carl Taylor?
No, we've decided not to.
Oh, okay. So this would be the last witness?
It would be.
Oh. All right.
Court in a 10-minute recess.
She has it, yes, Your Honor, thank you so much.
All right, where, see if we can get our Dr. Larkin. All right, let the jury step. All right, now, just step up, raise your right hand as you swear.
got a little here, so. Thanks.
Good morning, Dr. Larkin. Could you please state and spell your name for the record?
Yes, my name is Dr. Kelly Larkin, Kelly, Larkin.
And could you please give the jury a little background as to your education as well as your employment experience?
Yes, I'm a board-certified emergency physician. I've been practicing for 30 years. I have a bachelor's degree in science. I have a master's degree in neuroscience. I have a medical doctorate. And following completing medical school, I did an emergency medicine residency training for 3 years. Following that, I was invited to take the board examination to become board certified. I took the written boards. Once I passed that, the next year I was invited to take the oral boards. Once I passed that, I was board certified emergency doctor. Since that time, every 10 years I have to recertify. So I've recertified twice now. And so I'm still currently a board certified emergency physician. And for the past 30 years, I've worked exclusively in emergency departments, mainly in Houston, Texas area.
And have you had any publications as it pertains to articles and or any type of treatise?
I've had some publications from like graduate school and some small publications.
And have you had an occasion to also teach?
Yes, I've been a associate professor at University of Texas, so I've taught medical students, residents, paramedics, different emergency providers over the years.
Have you had the occasion to testify before and been certified as an expert in emergency medicine?
Yes, I have.
At this time, I would tender Dr. Larkin in the area of emergency medicine.
Any questions? on
No
that?
questions.
Okay. All right, again, ladies and gentlemen, this is Dr. Delaz, give an expert opinion in emergency medicine, her field, and you can place such weight as you choose to upon it.
And at this time, I would tender to the court Dr. Larkin's curriculum detail.
Okay, 63.
Dr. Larkin, in preparation for your testimony today, did you review any of the materials that were involved in this case?
Yes, I did. I reviewed the medical records, the EMS records, the 911 call, some of the toxicology reports, some of the transcripts from some of the testimony this week. At least that much. Probably some other things too.
I want to go right to it and take you to, Josh. I want to go right to the 911 call on February the 25th, 2023. Do you remember reading the information in regards to that particular call made by Blaise Taylor?
Yes, I do.
And did you have the opportunity to also read the EMS and the fire department's records as it relates to that 911 call?
Yes, I did.
And, well, before I do that, let me ask you, have you had the opportunity over the course of your career to treat overdoses?
Yes, I have.
Over the 30 years that you have practiced emergency medicine, how many overdose cases would you say that you have treated?
Many. It's pretty common. So there's different types of overdoses, accidental and intentional, but probably 400 or 500 over 30 years.
Have you also had the occasion to treat patients who ultimately pass away and expire?
Yes, I think unfortunately all emergency physicians do, and probably 10 or so deaths in the emergency department per year, maybe some early on years in the trauma center more than, significantly more than that.
Okay. And in regards to those overdoses, those 400 to 500 overdoses that you've treated and experienced over the last 30 years, did any of them have to do with illicit as well as prescription substances?
Yes.
Now I want to draw your attention to the 911 call on February 25th, 2023, made by Blaise Taylor. Can you tell the jury, did you read some of the symptoms that were explained by Blaise Taylor in regards to what he felt he was witnessing at the time?
Yes, so I read it. I also did listen to the 911 call as well. And I did listen to the symptoms he was describing.
Did you listen to any other person's description of Ms. Benning's symptoms as the medical episode was happening?
Her friend Nigeria had a around 6 minute phone call prior to the EMS arriving and kind of overlapping into that, prior to the 911 phone call. So there was a little description as well in her testimony this week.
And what symptoms, if any, stood out to you?
So if we start with her friend Nigeria, the phone call started and the way it sounds over those 6 minutes, towards the end of the call, she was not really able to understand what Jade was saying, whereas in the beginning of the phone call she could understand what Jade was saying.
And what about any of the symptoms that were described by Mr. Taylor?
Yes, so Mr. Taylor described to the 911 operator a couple different times. Initially he said that she had spit coming out of her mouth and that she was shaking. And then as the 911 operator was asking more questions about her status, he said that it sounds like she's snoring.
Was that a significant symptom to you?
It's a very significant symptom. We worry a lot. So snoring in a normal patient, this is not normal sleeping, is really a medical emergency. It means that they're relaxing the muscles in the back of their throat, impending respiratory arrest, not able to continue to breathe normally. So, and what's interesting is, I work in an emergency department where we have a lot of cancer patients, and so we give a lot of fentanyl in particular and a lot of opioids, and we really watch when we're giving those doses to make sure, and if the patient starts snoring or we see that that's too much, we realize, they have to be reversed. So it's something we're very familiar with and very concerning.
And if you would look on your screen, do you notice there that you'll see on line 48, do you see what it states there?
Yes, on line 48, that's where Mr. Taylor mentions it sounds like she's snoring.
And would that be the symptom that you thought was very alarming as you just described?
Yes, it is.
What, if anything, does that tell you? Well, before I ask you that, were there any other symptoms that you felt like were important?
I think those are the most important. We knew that she was breathing during this time period. That's mentioned several times by Mr. Taylor as the EMS operator was speaking to him, but those symptoms are very concerning.
And why do you feel like they're concerning?
Because, as I mentioned, when someone gets to that state where they're not breathing normally, or they have sonorous respirations, that means that they're not getting oxygen delivered around their body, to their brain, to their heart. They're not getting rid of the carbon dioxide that's bad for our body. And so when those things start piling up, then that's when you can have a heart attack. That's when you can have a cardiac arrest. Because if you stop breathing first, it's just a matter of time till then your heart's going to stop because it doesn't have enough oxygen.
And did you actually see, as you just described, that in this medical incident with Ms. Benning.
Yes.
Did you have the opportunity in preparation for your testimony today to not only listen to the 911 tape, but to look at the emergency records in this case? You could go back, Judge.
Yes, I did.
And what I mean by that is from EMS and the fire department. If you could blow up the pre-hospital care report, the second. Thank you. Do you notice in this report narrative where it states that the patient's boyfriend stated the patient was 4 months pregnant?
Yes, I saw that.
Now, I want to also ask you, did you also review the Emergency Communications Center information?
Yes, I did.
And did you also review another CAD incident report from the Emergency Center?
Yes, I did.
Did you, in your preparation today for your testimony, see where there was any other or any place where Mr. Taylor described this incident as an overdose?
I did not.
Did you see that someone did describe it as an overdose?
Yes.
And who was that?
So initially, it says that Medic 35 was dispatched to the location for an overdose. So the way that works is typically the 911 operator would have sent information to dispatch the ambulance, and they would have told them that was what their initial dispatch was for an overdose.
Did you have an opportunity to listen to the 911 call that Mr. Taylor made in regards to this incident?
Yes, I did.
Did he ever describe this as an overdose?
He did not.
Did you have an opportunity over your course of the 30 years in the emergency room? It's fair to say you see many emergencies.
Yes, we do.
Where do you currently work?
I work at University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center Emergency Department in the Houston Medical Center.
And prior to that, where did you work?
I was at Baylor St. Luke's Medical Center for 20-some years prior to that.
And in all those years, were you practicing emergency medicine?
Yes.
So have you had the opportunity to come in contact with many families who had loved ones who were experiencing significant medical emergencies?
Yes, every day that I worked.
And sometimes those medical emergencies ending in death.
That's correct.
And can you tell this jury whether or not there's any one way that you've seen a person respond to a familial medical emergency with a loved one?
Absolutely not. Everyone behaves differently in these emergency situations. I think it's common. Everybody behaves differently in just any emergency situation. So now if you're in an emergency department and a loved one is sick or something is going on, some people are calm and you can tell they're upset. Some people are a little more excited. Everybody responds differently. I could never describe that one way to do it. There's no right way to deal with that. I can't imagine being in a situation on the other side of it.
So I now want to draw your attention to when a patient arrives at the emergency center. Okay. Are there situations when a patient would have to be intubated when they get to the emergency center?
Yes, that can happen.
Have you had the opportunity to see whether or not Ms. Benning was ever intubated?
Yes, I did.
And did you find whether or not, did you determine when she was first intubated?
So intubation is actually a process where a tube is put down into the trachea to breathe for them. But in Ms. Benning's case, the EMS put a temporary airway in right away in the ambulance, which is a very common thing to do. And so a tube is put down, and it works well to breathe for a patient for a temporary measure. What happens then, we get them in the emergency department, and now we need a little bit more permanent measure that's for sure a secured airway, and that's what's called intubation. That's when you see it on TV, they go in with the scope, they look in, and then put the tube down, and that tube stays in there, and that's breathing for them. So that actual intubation followed the temporary airway, but that intubation happened at Vanderbilt in the emergency department.
And was there any medication that was given to Ms. Benning to assist with intubating her?
Well, yes, so one of the medications, she received succinylcholine in the emergency department.
Is that a common medication that is given to a patient when he or she is being intubated?
Yes.
What is the purpose?
It's a paralytic, so typically you want to give a sedative and a paralytic for a patient to intubate them. That's basically the definition of how you intubate someone.
Did you have an opportunity to review all the medical records? Well, let me ask you, do you see anywhere here on these medical records in front of you, we'll start with page 55, where you see the paralyzing agent succinylcholine given to Ms. Benning?
Yes, I see that in the ED notes.
Okay. And I should ask, is this in
Your Honor,
fact?
I object to misstating the medical records testimony that was not given because Ms. Benning was dead. All right.
And that's the
Okay,
reason.
101.
That's the reason we're going into the records, Your Honor.
Okay, you can cross-examine as you see fit. So this is her opinion.
Do you see on page 55 right in front of you? Are these the medical records of Ms. Jade Benning?
Yes, these are the EPIC medical records from Vanderbilt.
And can you circle, if you can, the top right corner with your finger where it states these are Jade Benning's medical records? Can you circle, if you see where it says ED notes, and if you were to go down there,
Oops, sorry.
if you were to go down maybe 9 or 10 lines, do you see where it says paralyzing agent succinylcholine?
Yes, I do.
Could you circle that for the jury, please? And could you read that for the jury, please, that notation that's made?
Yes, so in the ED notes, it says paralyzing agent, succinylcholine, injection, 76 milligrams, and then it gives it was given on 2/26/23 at 00:52.
Would that be the late night, early morning of February 26th?
Yes, early morning.
And as an emergency room doctor, does this state to you that Ms. Benning was in fact given succinylcholine?
Yes, she was.
And based on your review of the records, was she given that in an effort to help intubate her?
Yes, it's in the other notes as part of the procedure to do the actual intubation.
And it is your representation that this was in fact in the emergency room?
Yes, it
The
was.
emergency department?
I'm sorry, yes, it was.
I want to now draw your attention to page 90. And if you could clear your screen, please, at the bottom.
How do you do that?
Oh.
Oh, clear. Okay.
On page 90, are these two Ms. Jade Benning's medical records?
Yes, these are her records.
Could you circle her name
You
at the
don't
top?
have to
please?
get her to circle, it's right there in the report.
Do you see where Ms. Benning was, or at least succinylcholine, in these records as well? Oh, I'm sorry, those are. Move to the next page, please. To page 90. So we can move forward. So let's now go to, was there a time when Ms. Benning, based on your review of the records, was getting fentanyl?
Yes, she received fentanyl.
And do you see when and where she was given fentanyl?
Yes.
If I could I get the Elmo, please? Thank you. Do you see the highlighted area there on page 562?
Yes, I
of the
do.
medical records? Could you describe to the jury what it means here when it says fentanyl ADS override?
So that's when they actually just pulled out the fentanyl to administer.
Okay. And based on your review of the records, was she ever given fentanyl at this date and time?
She was not.
I now want to draw your attention to page 567 of Ms. Benning's medical records. Do you see the highlighted areas there?
Yes, I do.
And is this in reference to the medication fentanyl?
Yes, it is.
And was she given fentanyl at this time?
Yes, she was.
And what time do you see notated in the medical record of Ms. Benning as to when she was first given fentanyl?
So her initial infusion of fentanyl was 2/26/23 at 00:39.
So with
I'm
that,
sorry, 00:41. So
okay.
the pull and the, I think that's not the time. Yes, 00:41, 00:45 I have where the infusion started. So there may be another page of this as well.
Okay. This is page 727.
That's correct.
Okay. You could go ahead and explain to the jury what this is saying.
So this tells you that the infusion starting, the time that's highlighted on the right is 00:45 for the actual infusion starting.
Okay. And when does it end here in this medical record?
So,
Can
oh
you
yes, I can see. I'm sorry, I should put my glasses on. But the end date on this infusion and at this rate was 2/27/2023 at 18:43 or 6:43 p.m.
And in your review of all of Ms. Benning's medical records, is that where you see she was initially given fentanyl at Vanderbilt Hospital?
That is when she initially got fentanyl. Yes.
I now want to go back to page 90 of the medical records. Do you see there, in reference to the medication succinylcholine?
Yes, I do.
And what is this record representing?
So this is on the ED timeline. So this is basically step by step everything that goes on in the emergency department. And this shows you that at 00:15 that there was an order placed for succinylcholine.
And is this too in the emergency department?
Yes, it was.
I now want to draw your attention to page 562 of the medical record. What does this represent, Dr. Larkin?
So this is the succinylcholine, again, the pull. So that's taking out the succinylcholine out of the machine to be able to administer the succinylcholine. So that shows it was taken out.
Thank you. And based on your review of the medical record, I'm sorry, I will go to page 567. What does that represent?
So this is showing you that the succinylcholine injection of 76 milligrams was completed, and it tells you who had ordered it initially, and then it tells you the nurse that acknowledged that as well.
Okay. And does it state completed?
Yes, it does.
What does that mean?
That means that the order that had been made to give the succinylcholine actually was completed, so it was given to the patient, and that goes along with the other one we saw earlier that said when it was given.
And is that, again, in the emergency room?
Yes, it was.
Now, I want to now draw your attention back to, is it working? And you can go back, Josh, to the records of the litigation, of the toxicology reports. Did you have an opportunity to review the toxicology report from NMS 2312985?
Yes, I did.
And did you learn from the review of these records that this was in fact vomit on a comforter that Ms. Benning vomited during the evening as a result of her medical incident?
Yes, I understand that.
And did you consider that too to be a symptom in regards to her medical condition?
Yes, it's not uncommon as someone is having respiratory difficulty or other problem that they have some vomiting.
Did you notice, based on your review of any of these toxicology reports, have you had the opportunity over the 30 years of your practice to have to deal with toxicology?
Yes, so as an emergency physician, you get trained in toxicology. We obviously have patients that come in and we have to look at reports regarding toxicology.
And you're not claiming to be an expert in toxicology, are you?
I am not.
Okay. Did you notice in the records, lab reports of Ms. Benning from NMS, whether or not you noticed that coca-ethylene was present in her system?
Yes, coca-ethylene was present in that NMS sample that we're looking at.
Thank you. Have you ever had an occasion over the course of your career to treat a fentanyl overdose?
Yes, I have.
Have you ever had an occasion over the course of your career to treat a cocaine overdose?
Yes, I have.
And could you describe for the jury what you would expect to see after 30 years of working in the emergency room department? Have you had an occasion to deal with cocaine overdoses?
Yes, so they're almost opposites of each other. So cocaine is more of a stimulant, and then fentanyl is more a depressant. So cocaine overdose, typically when we see them in the emergency department, they've got fast heart rate, they're anxious, they're hot, they might be breathing normal or fast. They can be paranoid, they can be excited, but they're kind of the symptoms that go along with the cocaine. They come in maybe with chest pain because their heart's beating so fast or their blood pressure is so high. So it's all of those things like that are amped up on the system. So the difference with fentanyl is classically is there's more drowsiness, and I think I described that we see it sometimes in the hospital when we give a little bit too much fentanyl to try to treat someone's pain. We have to watch out for them getting too sleepy. But with fentanyl, again, the respirations tend to slow down. It's a little more gradual of a change versus like the cocaine. Like I said, they're hyped up and they've got things going on that are fast. Typically, in the fentanyl overdose, we see that they slow down their breathing. They end up having a respiratory arrest, and after that, again, if the oxygen doesn't get there to the heart and to the brain, then they can have a cardiac arrest. And that's typical progression.
And can you describe to the jury what a fentanyl overdose looks like?
Yes, so as I mentioned, the fentanyl is when they have typically the respiratory arrest. They might be awake and talking, but then all of a sudden they get a slurred speech, or they get quieter, or they start not feeling well and sleepy, and then their breathing starts slowing down. They could have snoring, as we talked about earlier, and then eventually the lack of oxygen can cause worsening things like a cardiac arrest or just a demise at that point from lack of oxygen to the brain and to the heart and the other organs.
And did you take a look at all the symptoms that were described of Ms. Benning in this particular case?
Yes, I did.
And were you able to opine as to, based on the symptoms that were described, what was more consistent with the episode that Ms. Benning was having?
In this case, it's definitely more consistent with fentanyl. And, unfortunately, we're seeing more and more of that over the past several years. It's just increased. And it's adulterated drugs. It's not necessary. People know that it's in something that they might be taking. And that's where we see these tragedies and these accidental ingestions of the fentanyl. So to that end, this is more of a fentanyl presentation where, like I said, in this case, she started talking to her friend Nigella. By the end, she really couldn't understand her, so maybe she was getting more not able to speak as well. And then, as Mr. Taylor describes, she's laying on the bed, she's not really responding much, she's snoring, she's got some foaming coming out of the mouth. All those things go along with fentanyl. Not to say there couldn't have been something else, but we know what we see a lot of is mixed things now, and unfortunately what we're seeing is a lot of cocaine that now has fentanyl in it, and that's been kind of the fourth wave of things that we're seeing, so we have to watch out for that. So to answer it, the fentanyl is more likely to be definitely part of this overdose.
As a medical professional in an emergency room, did you notice that Ms. Benning had fentanyl in her system prior to receiving it at Vanderbilt Hospital?
Yes, I did.
And are you able to opine that fentanyl had nothing to do, given all the medical records that you reviewed for Ms. Benning, to do with her medical episode?
Can you restate, please?
Can you opine that fentanyl had nothing to do with the medical episode suffered by Ms. Benning, based on the records that you've read?
No, so fentanyl, we know fentanyl was present, and it was present prior to her getting fentanyl in the hospital.
Your Honor, check, all gets cross-examined, but that is not what is in the record.
Okay, she's just indicated it is from her perspective, so go ahead.
Now, finally, have you had the opportunity to review the autopsy report from Ms. Benning?
Yes, I have.
And in reviewing the autopsy report, was there anything specific in regards to Ms. Benning's heart that stood out to you?
Yes, and I believe the medical examiner mentioned it as well. There was a enlargement of the left ventricle of the heart, and also the myocytes of the heart. It just means the cells that are in the heart, and they were enlarged in that left ventricular area. And that can be caused by several things like long-standing high blood pressure and other things. But again, that can be consistent with just something chronic, meaning you can't make big cells in that part of your heart quickly. It didn't happen with this event. It's not acute. It had to happen over time. So one of the chronic things that can cause this over time is just cocaine use over time can cause those myocytes to be large and that ventricle to be enlarged.
Now, to be fair, are there other things that could cause this type of myocyte hypertrophy?
Yes, so other things that make the heart work harder, like I said, high blood pressure, other heart problems.
In reviewing the records of Ms. Benning, did you have the opportunity to review her OBGYN records as well?
I didn't focus very much on those, no.
Okay, thank you. And what do you notice here in regards to what is notated in Ms. Benning, to be fair? Is this the autopsy of Ms. Benning?
Yes, it is.
What did you notice here?
This is what I just referred to. Basically, sections of the ventricle. The ventricle is one of the top chambers of the heart, and per this note, or per the report, it says they revealed focal myocyte hypertrophy. Big fancy words, but it just means the cells in that area were bigger than normal. And again, that's a chronic finding, not an acute finding.
When you say chronic versus acute, does that just mean one episode can't cause this?
Correct. This wasn't caused from the episode that caused her demise. This was something that had to have been going on prior to this to cause this.
And could you then read from page 5 of 5 of Ms. Benning's autopsy report, the highlighted area?
Yes. So histologic exam, so just basically looking at the cells on a microscope. The histological examination of Ms. Benning's organs reveals focal myocyte hypertrophy, the same thing we just talked about, in the heart, but no myocarditis or infarction. So in a case like this, when we have a young person who dies, the MEs are looking to see, could it have been a heart attack caused from something such as cocaine? We see young people that have that. Or could it be a myocarditis, which is an infection of the heart that can cause this kind of thing? The ME did not find those, so she just noted those as negatives in her report.
And of the medical records that you reviewed of Ms. Benning, was there anything you seen in those records that would notate that she suffered from high blood pressure?
No.
Thank you. I pass the witness.
Thank you.
Questions from this?
Dr. Larkin, as you said, you are not a toxicologist, correct?
That is correct.
And neither are you a forensic pathologist, correct?
That's correct.
Dr. Erin Carney is a forensic pathologist and expert in that field. Do you agree?
Yes.
Now, talk about some things you reviewed. How much of the testimony, have you been in the courtroom to listen? We have our backs turned to the audience, obviously, but have you been in the courtroom to actually listen to the witnesses?
No, I have not.
Okay. Have you reviewed any of the daily transcripts of the witnesses' testimony that began on Tuesday morning?
I have looked at some of the transcripts.
Okay. Have you looked at Dr. Olashoga's?
No, I have not.
Okay. He was the emergency room doctor who was the first doctor to see Miss Benning, correct?
Yes, I apologize. I did look at that. I forgot the name.
Okay. And Dr. Olashoga's testimony, which you read and considered, she arrived essentially dead, correct?
I mean, I don't believe she arrived dead. I mean, I don't think as an emergency doctor at that point we may make that same thought that he did. You know, when they arrive and they have no pulse and they're not breathing, yes, that's a correct statement. But when you go through what they did to revive them, then you can actually return someone back.
Yes. Brought back from the dead. That's what Vanderbilt and Dr. Olashoga did, correct?
So cardiac arrest, yes.
Yes.
Agree.
And she was intubated without the need for any medication because she was feeling no pain. Is that not correct?
I don't think anyone can say that, but I know she received medications.
After she was intubated, correct?
I believe the succinylcholine was at the intubation time.
There's only one intubation, right?
There is only one.
Because when she was removed from the emergency department to the ICU unit, they don't take it out at the emergency room and then redo it later, correct? There's one intubation.
One intubation, and that happened in the emergency department. That's correct.
Correct. And without going through all these pages of things, would you agree the medical records that are in evidence speak for themselves about when medication was administered and when it wasn't?
Yes, they do.
Okay. And so, if the, butcher the pronunciation, you pronounce it.
Succinylcholine.
Succinylcholine was administered in the ICU because after she had been resuscitated, she was having seizures and body movements that would be consistent with proper medical procedure, correct?
Yes, you can use succinylcholine other times, absolutely.
Because it's a paralytic.
Yes, it is.
Was it given in the ICU or the ER?
I believe it was given both, from what he's saying.
Again, if the medical records, Dr. Olashoga's testimony,
Oops.
and would you agree that the records
Hang on, Letter.
Got it.
that Ms. Benning was intubated on 2/25/2023 at 22:06 hours? Is that correct?
I would have to look to verify that, but if that's what you're seeing in the record,
Well, again, the records are what the records are, and testimony has been to that effect.
yes, sir. I just don't have it in front of me to confirm that.
So that's not a note that you would have made when reviewing Dr. Olashoga's testimony.
I didn't make any notes when I reviewed it, so I didn't make any timing on that.
Okay. Let me just ask about that. When did you do these reviews of the, obviously you could not have reviewed the testimony until it happened, so that would have been this week, correct?
That's correct.
So when did you do that? This week or over the weekend?
So I probably towards maybe Friday, I may have looked at some of the transcripts, and then over the past day, I've also been reviewing.
Prior to the trial starting, counsel asked you about reviewing a number of things, including the 911 call, correct?
Yes, sir.
When did you review that?
Just recently, I listened to it, I know yesterday, and then I got the actual transcript of it.
Well, since recently could be a term subject to interpretation, when were you retained and or become involved in this case?
I believe 3 months ago, approximately.
Okay. Recently,
Yes,
if we're talking years,
yes.
as opposed to months. So, 3 months ago, what was the first thing you reviewed?
I'm guessing I probably would have gone to the medical records initially and then the EMS records.
Well, don't necessarily want you to guess, but the Vanderbilt medical records are voluminous, correct?
Yes, 1,331 pages.
And the autopsy report,
Yes,
you would have reviewed that. And the EMT documents, the runs, you read those, correct?
yes,
Okay. And would you not agree that part of the reason for this is so you can have the facts correct to be able to make an informed opinion?
that's correct.
All right. And so, if you provided us information that the EMS was a guy, that was wrong, correct?
I don't know what you're referring to.
Document that you provided to us.
Oh, so that EMS guy was the 911 call. That was just, those are notes. It's not a report.
Okay. But the EMS guy, so you're saying now that was the 911 person as opposed to the paramedic. Is that right?
Well, the paramedics, I believe, were both females, so I may have put that wrong, but again, those are just some very informal notes.
Well, again, but you're putting down on paper your memory of the facts, your knowledge of the facts, correct?
I can, yes.
Right. So if you say the EMS guy said he thought it was an allergic reaction and he didn't check a pulse until he got her into the ambulance, that would not be the person answering the 911 call, would it?
It may not have been.
Did you review the testimony of Janci Jackson?
I did look at some of that, yes.
Just some of it?
That's correct.
So you know that during that call that Ms. Jackson was a part of, Ms. Benning said, "I can't feel my legs," correct?
That's correct.
And said to Mr. Taylor, "What did you put in my drink? My drink tastes funny." Correct?
Yes.
And from that, we have some time go by before the 911 call. But do you recall there being any mention of that, those symptoms on the 911 call? My legs, I can't feel my legs.
No, I don't believe so.
With respect to Dr. Olashoga, do you have any criticism of how he handled Ms. Benning
No.
in the emergency department?
No.
He did everything you would have done, correct?
I believe so.
Including having tests run, such as they could be run from the emergency department. Talking about to see what is in her system, correct?
Yes.
You do that.
Yes, I do.
Yes. And you get those results back as quickly as possible, correct?
We do.
It's not like weeks or months later that you're sitting or standing around the emergency department waiting for lab results to come back from a lab in Pennsylvania, correct?
That's correct.
And Dr. Olashoga needed to have those tests run and got Dr. Broccolari as far as this was something that needed to be investigated, correct?
Yes, that's my understanding.
And there is no fentanyl put into Miss Benning's body by Vanderbilt Hospital until 2/26/23 at 0:45 a.m. Is that not correct?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Now you talk about people that come in that you've seen in the Houston emergency room or the day before that, was it Waco? Was it Baylor?
No, that's Baylor St. Luke's Medical Center in Houston.
Okay, in Houston. Those people are alive when they present, correct?
For some of them, yes.
Okay. Well, have you had someone present who is determined to be dead because of acute cocaine toxicity in your emergency room.
Oh, I'm sure I have, yeah.
And that is Dr. Erin Carney's cause of death, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Dr. Larkin, based upon that and your testimony about what is typical of cocaine, typical of fentanyl, in the face of all that, you're saying, oh, it could be a fentanyl overdose, or it was a fentanyl overdose?
Well, we know there was fentanyl as well, and we know there was cocaethylene. I don't know that those were taken into consideration as far as the cause of death. I'm not saying there's not cocaine. What I'm saying is, by the presentation, what happened just prior, it appears that we know there's fentanyl, but the fentanyl was accentuating or causing this respiratory arrest.
And that's your thing. Could have been.
Yes, sir.
Because of that trace finding.
There's fentanyl was
Or are
found.
you basing this on the comforter?
I'm basing it on the comforter, and that sample that was also testified to by Dr. Methune and Dr. Jaguar.
Just one or two more things about getting the facts right. You would agree that's important?
Yes, sir.
To base any opinion on. And one of the statements in this report say on the day of her death, text messages indicate that Jade met with her drug dealer. That didn't happen, did it?
Again, that's not a report.
Forget that word, that statement.
Okay, those were just personal notes for me that I put down somewhere along the way, and I don't believe that there's any documentation that happened. I think we just know that she had text message contacting with the drug dealer that day,
So
back and forth.
Excuse me, I didn't interrupt, but you put that in your notes as something you were relying on.
Not
Right.
relying on something that I was going to be looking at, and obviously I would have corrected that if I had been given a time or asked to, do notes. I didn't do them until just recently when I was getting prepared for this. So if they're inaccurate, they're not complete.
Any inaccuracy, even about fentanyl at the hospital, would make your opinion essentially not acceptable, correct?
No, those aren't my opinions. I've given my opinions in my testimony in court under oath today. And those were, like I said, notes that I was going to review to get prepared for the case today, which I've done. And nothing that I've said corroborates something that's not a truth.
So if there is no fentanyl in Miss Benning's system when she arrived at the hospital, then it wouldn't be a fentanyl overdose, would it?
We know there was some fentanyl there. It was never really tested for.
In her blood at the hospital, in her body at the hospital, regardless, there was no fentanyl detected, correct?
I believe that it was never tested for because there wasn't enough blood in the initial sample from 225 prior to getting fentanyl. I believe that Dr. Carney mentioned that.
But we'll see about that. Nothing else, John.
Any other questions?
Yes, Your Honor. Can I have the gavel, please? Dr. Larkin, just a few questions for you. Wanted to draw your attention very quickly. When I asked you to take a look at page 55 of the medical records, Ms. Benning,
Yes.
what does that state to you?
It states that succinylcholine, paralyzing agent succinylcholine, was injected, 76 milligrams were given intravenously, 226/23 at 0052. And it's part of the ED notes, again, which is at the top, so that was in the emergency department.
When it says ED to hospital admission, what does that mean?
That's just on all the records, and they start in the ED and then it's on the top, just all the records have that.
And right below that, when it says ED notes, what does that stand for, if you know?
So part of EPIC has a section for ED notes, and that just basically shows notes that were generated during the visit. There's other areas of the record, but these are just basically the notes.
And just so the jury is clear, what is EPIC?
So EPIC is a enterprise system. It's a electronic health record. So it's one of the biggest in the country. Everything that goes on in the hospitals or the doctor's office or anything that's related are all on an EPIC record. It's actually about 40% of the market share in the United States right now. It's a big product, and it's people may be familiar with MyChart. So if you have a MyChart, that's part of EPIC, and that's how you can talk to your doctors and you can get your medicines and you have your appointments. So EPIC is just all that medical record all being in one electronic location.
Okay, and then I will draw your attention to page 43 of the medical records. At the bottom there, where it says ED procedure note by the Dr. Olushuga, do you see that?
I don't see that. I think you have to go
sorry.
further up.
There
There we go.
I apologize. Okay. Do you see that?
Yes.
And do you notice what number 1 says?
Number 1 is intubation. That's the procedure we talked about earlier.
And does it say given or ordered?
Ordered.
Is there a difference between the two?
Yes, there's typically a note that says about the intubation that says attempted one time, what time it happened, and all that.
You say a date of service. What does that mean?
What is date of service? So date of service is the day that something happened, so you can have the date of service and also the time of service. So this date of service for this procedure note, which the procedure note is the intubation order, was at 2:25:23 at 10:06 p.m.
And so this says it was ordered at 10:06.
No, that's not what she said.
Well,
Yes, that says this procedure note says in the notes that at 10:06 p.m. this procedure was ordered, which was an intubation by Dr. Olushaga.
and so your testimony is this says ordered, right?
Yes, it does.
And this note says given.
Yes.
Okay, and what time is that?
So this is the succinylcholine that was given. Again, that was given 2:26:23 at 0052. You can intubate someone without a paralyzing agent, depending on their status, but you don't necessarily, you wouldn't necessarily need to do that if someone was dead.
Why would, as an emergency room doctor, why would you give succinylcholine to a patient?
Well, because I guess we got to be careful how we use the word dead. When we say someone's in cardiac arrest, they have respiratory arrest or cardiac arrest, that means they're not breathing, their heart stopped. So essentially, I guess we call that dead. But we're resuscitating them. So fortunately, as an emergency physician, these patients that get to that situation, we bring them back. We resuscitate them. It's something we do. So they may have, and you hear people that say, oh, I died twice because I had 2 cardiac arrests, but they are not dead, brain dead. You're not going to stick them, in the morgue at that point. You're going to finish your resuscitation and determine if they truly are dead or they're not.
And I understand that, did you have an opportunity to review any of these toxicology report records?
Well, I did look at them.
And again, you're not a toxicologist, are you?
I am not.
And is this number 231-29285?
Yes, it is.
Have you learned that that is assigned to the comforter that the vomitus of Ms. Benning was located on when she was having her initial emergency episode in her apartment?
Yes,
That is before she went to Vanderbilt.
that's correct.
Have you learned through your review of all the records that there was fentanyl present and the vomitus on the comforter?
Yes,
And is this a record, based on your knowledge, if you know, that states that?
yes,
And to be clear, you're not stating Dr. Olushalo did anything wrong, are you?
no,
And although Ms. Benning passed away, as stated in this autopsy of acute cocaine toxicity, when it comes to the manner of death, that could not be determined.
Your Honor, I object to that.
that's correct.
She has asked that be stricken, not forensic pathology.
Yeah, this is a record that's in evidence.
Then there's no reason for this doctor to
Okay.
ask about it.
She's answered the question. Do you have any more few questions?
I do not. Thank
Okay.
you. I pass the
Any other
witness.
questions from the state?
No.
Thank you, ma'am. You can step
Thank you,
back.
sir.
Any further proof on behalf of Mr. Taylor?
May we approach briefly, Your Honor?
Okay.
At this time, the defense rests.
Okay. Will there be any rebuttal proof from the state?
Yes, Your Honor.
Who?
Dr. Carney,
Where is she?
she is sitting
Okay,
right here.
let her step.
Judge, actually, the link did not work. I need a few minutes just so I can tell her a few things about the last two witnesses.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll step down the hall, we'll break the lunch to 12:55. And other than Dr. Carney, any other rebuttal witnesses?
I don't believe so, Your Honor.
All right, let Mr. Taylor step around to the podium. We'll cover his decision not to testify. Raise your right hand and be sworn.
Do you swear to tell the truth, so help you God?
I do. All right. Go ahead.
Your lead witness, thank you. Mr. Taylor, you understand that you have the right, absolute right not to testify in this matter?
Yes, I do.
You also understand that you have the right to testify if you so choose?
Yes, I do.
And if you don't testify, the judge can tell the jury that no inference can be drawn from your decision not to testify.
That's correct.
You've consulted with your counsel in this case about that decision?
I have.
And your counsel's advisor and the advantages and disadvantages of either choice that you might possibly make?
Yes.
And after considering all those rights and
All right, so the state's wanting to call Dr. Carney.
Yes, Your Honor.
And what, do this so I can factor in while that's going on, the best thing for the jury and the parties, what is the state's thoughts on closing arguments time-wise?
I technically don't know the exact time. It would be at least 30 minutes, maybe 40 minutes for my first close. If it goes longer, I pre-apologize.
Talking about total,
No, I was talking about for my first close.
so total, what do you think it would be?
An hour.
I would say about 45 minutes.
For your total argument? The reason, let's see how long this goes.
Your Honor, I have one request based off of their opening presentation. They had some photographs and different things in I think it was jurisdiction and maybe opening. Our request is just that anything that is shown to the jury during closing arguments is something that has actually been admitted as an exhibit.
Okay. I mean, that, I would think is a given. Okay.
And Judge, I have a request, and that is at the close of the proof, whenever we get to that.
That's the big qualifier.
Exactly. If we could have a break, perhaps discuss the jury instructions.
Oh, sure, we'll have to do that.
Thank you.
All right, let the jury think.
afternoon, Dr. Carney.
Good afternoon.
You were not able to hear the prior testimony of Dr. Lindsay and Dr. Larkin, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. There was some testimony that was specific to fentanyl and whether Ms. Benning might have died from a cocaine and fentanyl overdose, which your autopsy result is that the cause of death was acute cocaine toxicity. Can you describe what, if any evidence did you have of fentanyl in Ms. Benning's system prior to her admission at the UD?
I don't have any evidence that she had fentanyl in her system prior to arriving at the emergency department.
And was there specific testing of the urine sample from 2259 that was tested specifically for fentanyl?
Yes, ma'am.
And that was negative, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then that first blood that was taken at 2231, there was no fentanyl detected, but fentanyl, the specific drug of fentanyl was not part of that test. Can you describe what was tested and kind of what results were not present that give an indication that there was also no fentanyl in her blood?
Well, when this commonly happens when we have someone who we believe has taken too much of a substance. They go to the hospital, they are unresponsive, and some testing is done on the urine to try to help direct the blood testing. In this case, we have an initial urine sample that is positive for cocaine and metabolites, no other drugs, no fentanyl. So when I have this limited amount of blood to work with, less than 2 milliliters, I really want to direct the testing so I can catch anything that's there, maybe that wasn't tested for already. In discussion with the toxicologist at Vanderbilt who had followed her for days and been trying to figure out what drugs might be in her system, we decided on testing for cocaine and metabolites since it was positive for cocaine initially and metabolites, and I wanted to catch that epinephrine methyl ester with it, knowing that the cocaine could break down. I tested for designer opioids. So these are the fentanyls that have the added chemical groups. So you can see it here on the list. There's furanol fentanyl and acryl fentanyl and all of these designer fentanyls, and all of those were negative, as well as one of the things that's been mentioned previously in this case, the 4-ANPP, which can be a precursor to fentanyl, could also be a metabolite. That was also negative, and the testing reporting limit was very low to try to catch anything that was there. It was negative. And then I think that was the bulk of my testing on that, and then we did the additional testing on the fetal liver tissue.
And the testing on the fetal liver tissue, you've testified about that before, but was there any fentanyl associated with that?
No.
And that's even after treatment in the hospital, correct?
Correct.
And the levels of the subsequent test, which you referenced working with a toxicologist at Vanderbilt, is that Dr. Berkeley?
Yes, ma'am.
And so the subsequent testing of blood and urine, those results, were those results consistent with her receiving it as medication in the hospital?
Yes, ma'am.
And again, the cause of death is acute cocaine toxicity, correct?
That's correct.
And there is no evidence that there was fentanyl in her system upon admission at the emergency department.
That's correct.
There was testimony by one of the defense experts that it was an assumption to say that Ms. Benning ingested something orally. Can you describe, you determined that it was ingested, and that is oral ingestion. Can you explain how you were able to determine that, and if it makes sense that it was not orally ingested?
When we look at one of the toxicology textbooks or toxicology books that I refer to rather regularly, and it gets updated on a regular basis with all new studies,
The studies have shown kind of the average, or the ranges and the averages for the amounts of cocaine in cocaine intoxications that have been detected and tested, both in obviously controlled studies, you know how much they've taken and how much the amounts will be, but even in ones that have been treated in the hospital, whether they've died or not. And the levels that we see in Miss Benning's blood are pretty much in oral ingestions. So your nasal insufflation or snorting, your IV injections, you don't have this level in those sorts of cases. You really see it in the thousands like this when they've ingested it orally.
Which, that's part of that oral ingestion is because that level is so high. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But also we have that vomit from the comforter that also tested positive for cocaine.
That's true.
And when EMTs see the pink vomit on her mouth, but they also find her face down with her face on the comforter and the vomit stain is under her mouth, that is part of the evidence that you considered in determining it was oral ingestion.
Yes, ma'am.
And then we also have a witness who testified that Ms. Benning said to Blaise Taylor, "What did you put in my drink? I knew my drink tasted funny." And you consider that, is that right?
I did.
Dr. Lindsay also made a comment that you determined that the cocaine all spontaneously hydrolyzed in the tube. That was the clear cap tube without the preservative. Does that make sense to you? And can you explain kind of what happened with the clear cap tube and then it hydrolyzed? Is that something that is commonly seen?
Yes, so that's something we kind of talked about before, how typically when we draw blood at the time of autopsy, we want to put it in a gray top tube that has that sodium fluoride to stop those enzymes from breaking down the cocaine, because it can continue to break down even after the person is deceased while it's still sitting there in their body and while it's sitting in the tube if you don't have something to stop those enzymes. We had a clear top tube which didn't have that, so the blood continues to break down. I've seen this on many occasions with hospital blood samples with maybe a prolonged time after death before autopsy, and so that's why we want to look for that ecgonine methyl ester. I found a study that was published back in the 90s, so this has been kind of a known thing for quite some time when you're looking at post-mortem levels of cocaine, that if you want an accurate estimate of the cocaine or accurate number of nanograms per milliliter of cocaine that's in the blood at the time of death, then you want to add the cocaine and the ecgonine methyl ester together, because that was all parent cocaine initially.
And this is not something that just you know, but is that something that the other forensic pathologist at the medical examiner's office, that is just a normal practice of how you would estimate the parent cocaine?
Yes.
And Dr. Bergleri at Vanderbilt, y'all discussed that, and she in fact agreed with you. Is that correct?
I don't remember if we talked about the specific numbers after the fact, but we did talk a lot about the testing and what tests would be most appropriate to order and what we were worried about for her cause of death.
And Dr. Bergleri also was aware of the cocaine on the comforter, and y'all spoke at length about if it was oral ingestion and the numbers and if everything lined up. And Dr. Bergleri was in agreement.
I think we did talk about that because we had a meeting with several of us, and we discussed aspects of the case.
Which there were several meetings where everybody was meeting to kind of discuss what the levels were and make sure that everybody was in agreement of kind of what happened and what the test showed. During those meetings, it came up where it was the lawyers were asking, could you determine how much cocaine was ingested? And the result of that was all of the toxicologists saying no.
That's correct. So the problem is, I can't remember, I may have mentioned this before, when you buy medication at the store, it's tested. There's, quality standards. You know that when you buy that over-the-counter medication, like ibuprofen or Tylenol, you know how much is in each pill because it's been standardized, it's been tested, it's passed, those sorts of testing. With your illicit drugs that you buy on the street, you don't have that kind of testing. You don't know how pure the drug is that you're buying, how much is in this particular packet of powder or liquid compared to another one. You don't even know for sure what's in it. They may tell you it's one thing and it's something else. So there's really no way to say exactly how much amount or how many times something was given.
And part of the high number is that oral ingestion and the other evidence that it was put into a drink and it was liquefied and in a liquid. Is that right?
So liquids or something dissolved in a liquid is going to absorb more quickly than something that's encapsulated, where the acid in your stomach has to eat through a capsule or has to break down a solid mass of the drug. If it's liquid, it's really just going to spread out and it's going to absorb more quickly.
And you previously testified about the one other autopsy case that had a similar level of cocaine concentration in their blood, and it was someone that swallowed some type of cocaine, rock something, in custody out of jail.
Okay, the jury calls that. What's your question about that?
Well, Judge, I was restating her prior testimony so I could get to the question.
Okay, good.
You testified about that previously, and that has the same level as Jade's level in this case, similar.
Yes, it did.
And based on the facts of that case, it would not have been an inmate that would have ingested 16 to 8 balls.
I mean, it has to be something small enough that he has on his person and he could swallow it quickly while on intake, and then of course it affected him rather quickly as well.
And liquid cocaine can be lethal even at a smaller dose. Is that correct?
Well, again, we don't know how much is in it, so, it could be very concentrated.
And so we would not be able to guess that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And also, specifically, cocaine, you've testified to this, has a connection to placental abruption.
Yes, ma'am.
And that is very commonly known, that it is the one substance that has a direct connection to that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Well, Judge, part of this is reiterating her prior testimony.
Okay, so she's answered that. What's your next question?
Can you describe how Jade Benning arrived to Vanderbilt University Medical Center?
How she arrived.
What was her state when she arrived in the ED?
She had no pulse. She was pulseless. She had no blood pressure. She was unresponsive and not breathing on her own. She relied on medical therapy and other providers to basically do her breathing for her.
And Dr. Olashoga testified that she arrived to the emergency department dead. Would you disagree with that?
No.
They also had testimony from Dr. Larkin. She works in an emergency department. She's not a forensic pathologist. And she was testifying about snoring and agonal breathing. Can you describe when does agonal breathing occur? What are the circumstances?
So agonal breathing is that gasping for air type breathing that occurs when the brain is not getting enough oxygen.
And is there one thing that causes that or one circumstance that causes that?
No. So anything that's going to deprive your brain of oxygen, so that right around the time of death. So it could be drugs, it could be a natural event. It's not specific to any one thing or any one drug.
And that is consistent with Ms. Benning's case of that acute cocaine toxicity?
Yes, so the oxygen is not getting to her brain as needed, and so she's having that agonal breathing.
And the circumstances of the EMTs finding her, face down in the bed with the pink vomit under her mouth. Can you describe if that happened after the agonal breathing? Is that consistent?
So at that point, it sounds like she's face down in the comforter and she's vomiting, and she's not conscious to be able to roll over and kind of protect her own airway so that she gets her face out of the comforter and out of the vomit so that she can breathe. So I would expect it would happen, around the same time or after the agonal breathing.
And would that be the same time that she would be going pulseless?
Yes, ma'am.
There was also some testimony related to someone who has consistent drug use. Was there if someone is using drugs consistently on a daily basis, do you find signs of kind of physical indications of that at autopsy?
There are things that we can look for. If you have someone who's smoking a drug, they may have more of that kind of black deposition in the lungs from where they're a smoker. We can look for if they're snorting it and it's something like cocaine that's going to constrict the blood vessels and could cause damage to the tissues. We can look for any sort of holes or damage to the nasal septum, the little dividing thing right that divides the two sides of your nose. We can also look for if they're an injection, if they inject their drugs, look for needle marks, needle tracks, where they've injected repeatedly to the point where they've scarred that vein, and they often have multiple needle puncture wounds over that as well.
So there are physical signs that can be seen at autopsy that indicate the manner of use?
Yes.
And specifically to Ms. Benning's heart, there was testimony that the focal myocyte, is it
Hypertrophy.
Thank you. That was indicative of long-term cocaine use.
I see scattered myocyte hypertrophy in many cases that aren't related to cocaine, that it's more of a natural cause of death, so I don't think that's specific to cocaine.
And did you have any evidence whatsoever that Ms. Benning was a cocaine user ever?
No.
And Dr. Carney, your expert opinion on the cause of death is acute cocaine toxicity, not a fentanyl overdose, correct?
Correct.
Good afternoon, Dr. Carney.
Good afternoon.
How are you today?
All right.
I just wanted to talk with you about a few things. You stated that on direct examination that you had a meeting with Dr. Brucolari and others.
Yes.
And at that meeting, you guys were discussing the toxicology results for Ms. Benning.
Yes.
And who all was at that meeting?
Oh, we were discussing timeline of events and toxicology.
Do you have notes there in regards to that meeting?
I'm not sure. I know that there was the police and Dr. Berkeley and me, and I think General Norman may have been there as well.
And I'm sorry, did you have notes for that meeting?
I did, but I don't see them here.
In that meeting, were you aware that Dr. Brucolari found that Ms. Benning did in fact have cocaine in her system?
No.
She didn't share that with you?
I don't recall seeing those records. No.
Are you familiar with the CFSRE records?
I am now, but I don't remember discussing this then.
Okay. And now that you have seen the CFSRE records, have you since learned that Ms. Benning did in fact have cocaethylene in her system?
I believe it was in the urine, and yes.
Okay, thank you. You testified earlier in regards to toxicology report that was a result of the blood that you sent to NMS. And I think you said that you had a very limited amount of blood to test for. Is that right?
That's correct.
And the reason you had a very limited amount, it wasn't because you didn't request enough, it was because you wanted the most accurate picture of what was going on with Ms. Benning at the time she entered the hospital.
That's correct. We want the earliest blood sample if possible.
And the earliest blood sample, to be fair, was retrieved for medical purposes, not forensic purposes, correct?
That's correct.
And so that's why it didn't have the gray topper on top.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And when you ordered those tests on that blood for which you relied on for your results in your autopsy, you did not order the fentanyl test, correct?
Correct. I ordered the designer opioids, it's kind of specialty fentanyl test.
Right, but it's not fentanyl, correct?
Correct.
And so if fentanyl was present, we wouldn't have known because you didn't order that test, is that right?
Yes, I didn't order that test because it was not in the urine. So if it's not in the urine along with the cocaine, there was no reason to waste blood testing for something that's not there.
But to be fair, nothing was in the urine, isn't that true?
No, that's not true. There was cocaine in the urine.
Which urine are you referring to?
The very first one.
The one for 225 and 2259?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, your blood sample was 225 and 2231, which was before the urine.
Yes, so cocaine was in both.
Okay, but you said you were relying on the urine.
Right, to help direct my testing because I didn't have a lot of blood, so I needed to direct my testing to things that I was concerned about. So the fentanyl had been ruled out in the urine and the cocaine was ruled in, but I wasn't sure that anyone had tested for the designer fentanyl, so that's why I tested for those.
So but just so that the jury is clear, fentanyl itself would not have shown up.
Not in this particular test.
Not
no.
in the blood, okay,
Correct.
just to be clear. Now, what test was that the fentanyl showed up in and 22, that did not show up? Is that 2259?
Yes,
Do you
ma'am.
have a toxicology report number for that?
I don't have it here. I believe that was the CSFRE that was the earliest urine that was tested.
Which test result is that?
That was on the 2259 urine. The CSFRE where they did the testing for the over 1,000 drugs.
Okay, I mean, what's the test number so that I can look at it?
I don't have that one here. I don't have that number right here.
Okay. In regards to the vomit, the vomit was before the blood and the urine, correct?
Correct.
Were you aware that fentanyl showed up in the vomit?
No, the findings it says for case sample was positive for cocaine and benzoylecgonine.
Did you learn later, if I could have the elbow, please? Just so that we're oriented, the 231, 29, 285,
Yes.
which is for the comforter, you see that?
Yes.
Do you see here with the 231, 29, 285, that fentanyl is in fact present in the vomit? Did you know that?
The interpretation, sorry.
Okay, she's gonna explain her.
Well, the interpretation here says the case sample 007, which is the fabric in the area with the visible stains, was also none detected for the presence of fentanyl.
Okay. Did you know that The reason that NMS may not indicate a positive is because it will be below the reportable limit.
Yes.
Not necessarily because there's no indication of it. Are you aware of that?
Yes. I've never been told that there was ever any fentanyl in it.
And to be fair, did you know that these records are part of what we call a litigation packet?
I did not know that.
And when you get your toxicology report results, they don't come with the litigation packet.
Correct.
Right. You have to request and pay for those.
Okay.
Are you familiar with pharmacokinetics?
Some.
Are you able to perform the pharmacokinetics calculations?
No.
That's for a forensic toxicologist, right?
Right.
Okay. And were you aware that Dr. Kotulski did not agree with your method of combining EME with cocaine to get a definitive measure of concentration level?
Objection, Your Honor. Counsel is misstating the witness
Okay,
testimony.
the jury's heard that. What are you wanting to reference about prior testimony without you determining whether it's correct or not?
No, Your Honor, I checked. It is.
See, there you go again. It's not up to you to check. These ladies and gentlemen of the jury are going to check everything.
Yes,
So
sir.
what is your question?
In regards to your testing to get an accurate picture of exactly what was going on as it relates to substances, a hair follicle test would be a good way to actually get a good picture of what type of drugs and or substances in someone's body. Would you agree?
Well, the problem with that, sometimes if you're worried about levels, is there's not a lot of studies or samples or experiences you can compare to with hair. They draw blood in people. What's in the hair, sure, and show if there's any drugs there.
It wouldn't show?
Yeah, it would show if there were any drugs there, yes.
Thank you. As it relates to the, I know I'm gonna mess this up, the focal myocyte
Hypertrophy.
hypertrophy, thank you. Miss Benning was a young woman, correct?
Yes,
And otherwise a very healthy young woman, correct?
correct.
Now, we're certainly not saying that the only reason that she would have an enlarged ventricle is because of cocaine use. Not saying that, but it is certainly a possibility, is it not?
I mean, something that will increase your blood pressure would cause your, heart cells to work harder. So you could say myocyte hypertrophy goes with things like that. So that could be a lot of different things. Cocaine's one of many on the list.
What other things would be on the list?
I mean, any sort of stimulant or, even, who knows, anxiety or genetic problems or whatever.
When you say stimulant, what is a stimulant?
Well, like fentanyl, methamphetamine, something that drives the blood pressure up.
When you were determining and making the decision as to what to test for, I think you said that you had done some research into Miss Benning, and with the cocaine, that was significant enough for you to stop there, right?
Well, it's not so much that it's stopped there, but we really want to, and this is the case because, like I said, the blood sample is limited. We want to kind of focus in on the things that we want to confirm, because otherwise, if you test for everything, you're going to run out of blood. You're not going to be able to confirm anything. So, in this case, we already knew that she was positive for cocaine, and we wanted to get a number. Like I wanted a number that I could recognize, and then that was really the only positive test that she'd had.
When you were making your decisions, weren't you not making your decisions under the impression that she had no history of drug use?
I mean, whether she had a history of drug use or not, you need to look at what are your positive tests. And then you can think about the history when you're looking at the interpretation of those results.
But weren't you told she had no history of drug use?
I was told that the only drug history she had was making some marijuana edibles in the past, and that had stopped when she found out she was pregnant. So no recent drug history.
Do you remember taking or giving a testimony previously in regards to Ms. Benning?
Yes.
And do you remember when you gave that testimony, I believe you stated that she does not have a history of drug use. She did not appear to want to take anything that would harm her child or herself.
Right. So knowing with her pregnancy, she stopped even with the marijuana edibles, and there was no reason to believe she had taken any drugs as of late.
But she did have a history of drug use, didn't she?
We talked about that. So you even showed me the transcript, and we talked about how I said she didn't have specifically like the cocaine, that sort of illicit drug use, that the only drug use I was aware of was the marijuana edibles.
Well, I'm looking at the transcript here. It doesn't say that. It just says no history of drug use.
Okay, but we talked about it on my direct, or my, I guess, cross the first time to clarify this.
And if you say that she did not appear to want to take anything that would want to harm herself or her child, how do you explain cocaethylene in her system?
I don't know how the cocaine was delivered to her, if it was absorbed in some sort of alcohol. I do not know how that was done or where that alcohol came from.
Would Ms. Benning not be able to taste cocaine and alcohol if she was given it unknowingly?
I don't know how much alcohol it might be, and I don't know anything about cocaine taste, so I can't help you with that.
Fair enough. And certainly when you, or before you came to any of your conclusions, you had met with law enforcement and the prosecution, correct?
So I met with law enforcement because I rely on law enforcement in their investigation when I'm determining manner of death. So it's very important that I know the circumstances of the case.
And that is where you learned she had no history of drug use, right?
The history that we've discussed, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just to clarify, Dr. Carney, your cause of death was not based off of the meetings with anyone. It was just the manner of death. Is that right?
Correct. So the cause of death is something I'll determine through the autopsy and the toxicology and the histology, the looking at the slides, all the work that I do on my end. I really refer to the investigation for manner of death.
Any other questions?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any further proof from the state?
No, Your Honor.
Any further proof on behalf of Mr. Taylor?
No, Your Honor.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the jury, if you'll step back down the hall briefly, we'll get back with you. In terms of jury instructions and lesser included offenses, the court plan, as the case law points out, to charge the indicted offense, second-degree murder, voluntary manslaughter, reckless homicide, and criminally negligent homicide as to each of the 4 counts. Any comments, observations from the parties on that?
Totally appropriate. Yes, that's right.
Are you requesting, Mr. Brand, or whoever is dealing with this, the ask is based on
discussions, jury out discussions with your co-counsel, are you requesting the 4214 cause of death instruction?
I was just looking at that, Your Honor.
I mean, co-counsel mentioned that the bench got, I don't know when it was, but it was out of the hearing of the jury that she was asking some of the questions because
That appears like that might be an appropriate instruction.
Vanderbilt and the family caused the death of the fetus.
I don't think the portion of that that says, there's like a parentheses portion that says there's evidence in this case that the deceased required medical attention as a result of the injuries.
You talk about the 1, 2, 3, 5th paragraph?
Yes, I don't think that paragraph needs to be in.
Okay. But it's the defense position that this instruction should be given for the jury to determine whether it was reasonably foreseen, if in fact they find Mr. Taylor had anything to do with it, whether it's reasonably foreseeable that his actions was the proximate cause of the death. Or something Vandy or the family chose to do.
No, I have not.
Well, you grilled the family and other people about them deciding not to.
Sir, I asked one question, one witness.
You had multiple witnesses.
I don't think the argument is that there's an intervening cause. I think the question is just, the argument as I understand it is that it's more of a proximate cause, and I think that's probably, there are probably general instructions that address that. It's more of like a reasonable doubt kind of thing. I don't think we necessarily have to have that in there.
So you're not seeking 4214.
No, I don't know if that's the right one in this case. Because I don't think that's the argument, that there was some kind of intervening cause.
Well, I mean, the question, that's even why I got to looking at it, wondering whether it should be in. I mean, there were questions about whether the family declined performing a C-section, what Vandy's advice was, and whether the fetus was viable or would have problems, I think was one of the words that was used.
Yeah, I don't think, I don't anticipate that being an argument. I don't think we can go back.
Okay. Does the state have any input on that?
Hey, Your Honor, I believe the pattern 708, for example, the defendant, or one for whom the defendant unlawfully killed the alleged victim.
Oh. Are any other requests from the parties about jury instructions?
The state has no special requests, can't really think of anything.
No, give it a defense.
Okay. What do the parties need? A break prior to closing?
Yes, please, Your Honor.
How long?
20
keep kind of coming back to this. Now, worry about things that maybe y'all are in the heat of the moment don't worry about, and that is if the jury gets this case in at around 4:45 or 5 o'clock, with closing arguments, a break till 2:05, and jury instructions is going to get us to that or more, we lose our alternates. So if they deliberate for ever how long they want to, they can stay up here till midnight if they want, but I don't foresee that happening.
Police court, that is one thing I actually was thinking about, would be to have the alternates come back in the morning for the concluding instructions and then dismiss them. So just for the sake of not excusing them and then sending them home.
Any thoughts on that, Mr. Green?
I think that's probably fine.
Okay. Doing closing arguments, making sure we have enough report back in the morning, and do the jury instructions with them starting that deliberation process fresh, so to speak.
May I, Your Honor, suggest something?
Okay.
May I suggest that they get the charge with the closing in the morning so that it's fresh and everything is on their mind then, as opposed to...
Then we just forego 2 or 3 hours of today.
Judge, what I was referencing is that last concluding paragraph of the instructions where it's like excusing the alternates and you may now go.
Yeah, I've never done that before.
We just say, I've seen that just where that
I
last
did the jury
page.
instructions and I give them to them and let them start deliberating.
I would just say that is, I think, an option to read the instructions, except for that last page, and say, I will have
Then they come back tomorrow with little or nothing on their plate, so to speak.
except deliberation, and that's a full plate.
Are you saying, Ms. Hollins, you're not ready for your closing argument?
Well, I would like 2 things. It would be nice to have a little time to go through all the evidence. It's been almost 7 days worth of testimony. And then I do think that the jurors will appreciate hearing the closing arguments consistent with the instructions, and then starting fresh for a whole day of deliberation.
Judge, I can say,
They want to go
one
on
of the few
with
times,
charges.
the state would be in agreement.
Oh,
For one of,
See, Roger, I knew you were gonna laugh.
but see, then in the morning, your 45-minute estimate and 1 hour estimate are going to change.
It'll be quicker,
Yes, it would.
more efficient.
Yes.
Okay. Because I'm going to hold you to the 1 hour we're setting. Fitz wanted 45, so we'll set an hour for each. All right, let the jury step back down. Let them go for the day. input from the attorneys who need, rightfully so, a small break, like 20 minutes or so, to gather themselves in terms of their closing arguments and things they may want to reference. Factoring in that, plus closing arguments from both sides and the court's instructions to you, which will be a little over 30 minutes, it would probably just having, you can blame me for this if you don't like this decision, because it's mine and nobody else's. I get input from the attorneys, but the best thing from my perspective is to recess for the day, have you come back in the morning. There's a number of other things that I consider after 600 plus jury trials. So just trust me on that. Come back in the morning refreshed, be to the point of closing arguments to you and the court's instructions, and then you would begin deliberating shortly after you come here in the morning, rather than starting at 5 o'clock tonight, okay? Just remember what I've said about not discussing the case, going by any locations, looking things up, listening to anything in any kind of media outlet, social media included, and leave your notes up here. Tomorrow, report in the morning, 8:45, 8:50, and we'll get you up and get the case submitted to you. You can step out with the report. Give the jury a few moments to get off the floor, and they're printing you the statement.